All right, our next project is file 2015-7576. It's 1250 Lakeside Drive. Is there a staff report?
Yes. Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is George Schroeder. I'm the project planner. Looking at the aerial, this is a project site. The site is outlined in a red line. It's located east of Lawrence Expressway, north of Oakmead, and along the south side of 101. The site is almost 9 acres in size. It's currently vacant. It's been vacant for about 10 years. A Four Points Hotel was previously on site for about 25 years. To the west of the site is a 700-unit apartment complex, the Avalon Apartments. To the east is a Residence Inn Hotel. A man-made lake borders the south side of the site. It's owned in common by the business association around the lake. And commercial and office uses are located on the south portion of the site. This project site is the sole property within the Lakeside Specific Plan. This was adopted in 2005 as part of a previous hotel and residential project that was never built. So this project is to reactivate that approval. So this is just a summary of the entitlements requested by the applicant. The specific plan amendment proposed is to primarily reconfigure the location of the land uses that were previously approved, where the hotel is now proposed on the east side and the residential is on the west, where it was flipped before. A height amendment is proposed. Currently the height limit is 78 feet. The proposed amendment is to increase that to 85 feet. Both the proposed and the existing allowance for rooftop features for screening units allows an additional 15 feet above the normally allowed height limit. There's also various text amendments that are mainly to reflect the current project. The current Lakeside Plan is very tailored to the previous project approval. There's also been some changes in city policies such as green building, water efficiency, and parking that were also updated as part of the proposed amendments. The special development permit for the project is mainly for the site and architectural review of the new hotel and residential project. The hotel is proposed at 6 stories. It's 263 rooms. On the ground floor, it would include a restaurant and meeting space. The apartments are proposed at 7 stories. The ground floor, or the first two floors, are a podium parking garage, and then 5 floors of residential units above. 250 units in total are proposed. For the hotel parking, there's a 3-level above-ground parking structure that's on the east side. And there's also various site and off-site improvements along the frontage and along the southern portion of the site near the lake. I'll go over that in a little bit. There's a tentative parcel map to split the lot to have a lot for each land use. And for the environmental review, the city conducted a supplemental environmental impact report. This is to basically follow up on the previous EIR that was done in 2005 to look at impacts since that time. And I'll go over that also in a little bit, but these are notably transportation impacts due to changes since 2005. So just the Lakeside Plan amendments, just again, it's really to switch the location of the hotel and residential uses, increasing the height, and also some various text amendments. Here's the proposed site plan. So the buildings are oriented along the northern portion along Lakeside Drive and in 101 to frame the streets and conceal parking from view to the maximum extent possible. Building setbacks are consistent with the Lakeside Plan. There's also sufficient buffers in between each land use and land uses off-site. Vehicular access is from 4 points on Lakeside Drive, 2 for public access and 2 for vehicular access for service vehicles. Pedestrians can access the site from the Lakeside Drive public sidewalk, which would be improved as part of the project, and also walkways internal to the project and by the lake area. The project proposes a new public promenade on the southern portion of the site. This also doubles as an emergency vehicle access easement. The hotel, it includes the restaurant, the meeting and banquet space, fitness rooms, bar and lounge space, and a rooftop open space in meeting area. The residential building includes a mix of studio, one bedroom, and two bedroom units. These range from about 440 to 1,400 square feet. The residential building includes a community room, lounges, fitness rooms, and other recreational space. The project's primary outdoor activity is on the southern portion facing the lake. There's a mix of private and public open space. There's also open spaces within the interior of each building in the courtyard areas. There is a deviation proposed for the residential balconies. The deviation is for the dimensions of the balconies. The code standard is 7 feet in any direction and 80 square feet. And there are several instances where the balconies do not meet the width requirement of 7 feet, but they are, the depth requirement, but they are at least 7 feet in width. Staff found that this deviation was supportable because there's an extensive amount of open space in the project. There's no other deviations proposed aside from the proposed amendments to Lakeside Plan. The project includes a removal of about 39 protected trees and 239 trees to replace them to mitigate their loss. Here are the proposed elevations from the Lakeside Drive view. The image above is for the hotel and apartments on the bottom. The Lakeside Plan, its design intent is really to create a consistent and harmonious and distinctive design that creates a landmark project for the city. So staff worked with the applicant extensively, as well as the city's consulting architect, and we're at a point now where we feel that it is meeting that design objective. This view doesn't really show it, but the main function is to orient the main activity towards the lake facing portion of the project. The applicant will explain a little bit more about that, but it's really to reinforce the indoor and outdoor experience. The hotel is proposed at 85 feet, and this is mainly at the points of the building on the left side of that elevation that's facing US 101. So the mass for both buildings is concentrated along the frontage, and for the hotel building, it cascades down towards the lake where it gets lower in height. These are just a couple of renderings viewed from the north and the south, more of like a bird's eye level. But on the bottom image, you'll see the open space proposed towards the lake side. The buildings would be, the hotel building would be built to LEED Gold Standard and LEED Silver for the residential building. There's also proposed as modular construction for each building, where the units and hotel rooms would be manufactured at an off-site location, then transported to the location and constructed on site. This image shows the public park area that's proposed. The project is required to meet a parkland dedication requirements, and the project is proposing a combination of in lieu fees as well as a land dedication in form of an easement. This includes some on-site areas, the dog park and tree grove area, as well as the promenade, and then the off-site area around the lake, which will be improved primarily with ADA improvements for the existing walkway system. As part of this, there will be public access easements recorded throughout, where someone can go around all sides of the lake and go from east to west to Lakeside Drive to Lakeway Drive. The park area would be owned and maintained by the property owner, as well as the association that maintains the lake area. The city would have access to it, but wouldn't be maintaining it. So just a brief summary on the supplemental EIR. The initial study found that the project would not result in any new or significant environmental impacts than those disclosed in the original 2005 EIR, with the exception of traffic impacts. And the EIR found significant and unavoidable traffic impacts at 4 intersections at different AM and PM peak hours. These intersections are county expressways that the city does not have jurisdiction over, so they're automatically considered significant and unavoidable because we do not have jurisdiction and we can't control mitigation measures in terms of fee payment timing and when the mitigations will be constructed. However, there are some fair share improvements identified by the EIR where there is a mitigation in place by the county, and the applicant would be paying towards that as well as the city's standard impact fees. So in summary, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the Council to certify the supplemental environmental impact report, make the findings required by CEQA, the statement of overriding considerations for the traffic impacts, as well as the mitigation and monitoring and reporting program, which is part of the conditions of approval. Also recommend to adopt a resolution to amend the Lakeside Specific Plan and approve the special development permit and tentative parcel map. So this concludes staff's presentation. We do have our consultants on the project, Christy Weiss from David J. Powers, the environmental consultant, and Francisca Church from Fear and Peers, the traffic consultant. And we have Carol Shariat from our traffic division here as well to help answer any questions. We just presented a letter from the Unite Here Local 19 Union we received today. That's available as a desk item. And there is one minor change we would like to make to the conditions of approval. This is a minor text edit, basically taking the language from condition GC 18 regarding the lake access easement and carrying that language over to PM2 and EP3. These conditions were essentially replicated throughout, and some of the language didn't get carried over. So it's just a minor text amendment just to be consistent with GC 18, and we can discuss more if there's clarification. And this concludes our presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Howe?
Yeah, if you could sort of catch me up. Once upon a time in a residential like this one, the water and the electricity would be either separately metered or had it set up so that it could be separately metered in the future. Is that in this project?
I don't believe it's part of this project. I know that the last project was for condo units.
And those would be separately metered, I would assume.
Meters, but I imagine that the meters will mainly be for each land use and operated by the hotel management and residential management.
So the residential portion wouldn't ever go into a condominium kind of thing for sale, where you'd have just these huge meters and you wouldn't be able to tell.
It could. There is a separate process that an applicant would have to go through for that. There is a condominium conversion policy we have that would require a separate permit and public review.
When that comes through for a condominium project that's been like this one, a residential unit, does it require separately metering of water and electricity? Because it's sort of hard to retrofit them.
Right. I'm not sure offhand, but I know that there are some utility upgrades and other reports on the accuracy of converting that would have to be done. But I'm not sure of all the details offhand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss.
Could you explain to me how, if the project was deemed complete prior to the effective date of Sunnyvale Municipal Code 19.75, so thus it is exempt from paying in lieu fees? it doesn't seem complete to me yet, so how is this exempt?
Yes. It's exempt. The project was submitted in 2015, and several months before the housing mitigation fees went into effect in September 2015. The project had provided all the required information in terms of the drawings, and then technical reports, starting the process for the environmental review. So it was deemed complete prior to that time.
That seems incomplete since it hasn't passed the commission, hasn't gone to the. That's.
Yes. Well, it hasn't gone through the entitlement hearings, but in terms of from the Permit Streamlining Act, where staff has to deem an application complete or incomplete within a certain amount of time. In terms of having all the required application materials, even though there was, still comments on various parts of the project, at least having all of the required information we need to conduct our review, we had all that before the housing mitigation fee went into effect.
I think that's a very sad comment. I mean, I understand where you're coming from technically, but this is a very large residential project, and that it's not contributing at all to our affordable housing crisis. Stating for the record, it's very sad, very disappointing. There's mention in here of a reduced development alternative. In the same place where it talks about significant and unavoidable cumulative effects of 3 impacted intersections, and the reduced development alternative only takes away 22 hotel rooms and 15 apartments. That seems rather negligible as a reduced development alternative. Would a more dramatic alternative lessen the significant and unavoidable impact?
Yes, there is another alternative that was disclosed in the EIR. It was with a much more significant reduction. It would have reduced all the environmental impacts to a less than significant level, but it wouldn't be the build out wouldn't be as high as what the minimum is in the Lakeside specific plan, and it wouldn't be meeting the objectives of the project, so it wasn't considered as a feasible alternative.
Could you go back? You had a slide up there of the public park area.
Yes.
And I was looking at the circulation plan of that. Okay, I'm not getting up here, but looking at that, okay, I can see where there's park entry at 3 points, but where does the public park if somebody should drive in rather than bicycle or walk in? Where do they park on
Yes.
this?
So the bicycle parking would be close to the entrance on the left side of that graphic, kind of on the lower left side, right along Lakeside Drive. This is the main entrance into the park area, and then there would be vehicle parking. Most likely in the garage in the hotel. If the project is approved, this is something that the city would work with the applicant on the final location. But that was the initial proposed location.
Okay, so no parking along the lake.
Correct.
And then my last question has to do with maintenance of the lake itself. You know, the water quality, the cleanliness of the lake. Is that something that the hotel and the apartment management is responsible for? Because there are businesses on the south side, and I would think it would be a shared responsibility.
Yes, it is a shared responsibility. It's shared by all the property owners around that lake area, including this property owner. So they would have a major stake in making sure that that's maintained. But it would be the formal business association.
And there's a mechanism for that.
Yes.
Or there will be. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I just want to respond to Commissioner Howe's question about separate utilities. In the code to do a condo conversion does require electric, gas, and water to have each unit to be separately metered.
Thank you.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Simons.
Sure. Did I miss something in the staff report about the pedestrian throughways, whether there's going to be any wayfinding that's going to be planned for that?
Yes, there is a condition for a master sign program.
Okay.
And that would be mainly covered in there.
Yeah, okay. The other thing is that in staff report on page 17, very top, it was talking about the protected trees that were removed in the last. I think there's a little bit of an inaccuracy that the trees, there were no trees that were removed for the previous project. The trees were left and they died because of lack of watering and any care of taking care of the project. So what I'm seeing is that we really don't have a this is what I'm upset about was this is like a case where we had a development, didn't go through, and then it laid fallow, and a lot of what would be heritage trees that would have been a great addition to any project died on the site for the lack of maintenance by its owner, I guess, whether that be the bank or whoever owned it at the time. And what I'm saying, I'm not quite buying it's just part of some other previous project. There was a great loss of stuff. When it comes to what's being replaced, I'm seeing, again, a very ornamental grouping of landscape. But when it comes to being even close to the type of genetic, not that I want it the same, because some of the decisions that had large trees before were very high water, but that there was some significant trees that were there, and I really don't see that much being done in this plan that is even anywhere related to what it was, even if we go in 20, 30 years into the future. I just think this is just was staff at all pushing for any I mean, other than going to 36-inch, 48-inch box trees, which you can get pretty big box trees for some small genetic trees. The discussion seemed to be very skewed in terms of getting things that were instant landscape rather than estate-sized trees that would, long-term, that would bring back kind of the feeling that this site used to have.
Thank you. Yeah, we know your comment. There was also the replacement requirement was based on the trees that were removed after the project was demolished, or the previous project was demolished. So just wanted to know that was part of the replacement requirement. But I think the applicant can speak more about the proposed landscaping, because they did make some changes after the study sessions. But I believe they would be open to additional changes to the species.
Okay, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Melton.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So staff, I've been spending a little time here trying to digest the desk letter that came from Unite Here Local 19, and I also made note when I was reading the final supplemental EIR that they had provided a comment letter. I don't know if staff has also had a chance to digest the desk letter, but do you have any comments or a summary for the Planning Commission about what's presented here? And then just as a follow-up question, is staff aware, is there anybody here from Unite Here Local 19 that intends to speak about the desk letter?
Looks like there is. We haven't had a chance to really digest it in detail, but it is mainly about the shuttle service from the hotel, shuttling people to and from the airports and transit. It looks like the comment is suggesting expansion of that service. Also, the housing affordability, increasing affordable units on site or providing affordable units on site. And I believe the other was having more of a self-sufficient site with places for hotel workers to live in the residential unit. So I believe that was the main points of their letter, but they can explain further.
Yeah, okay. I'll just, this isn't a question, probably more just an observation. There's a line between comments for an EIR versus comments about the project. And it seems to me that the desk letter that we have talks more about the project, even though it's under the guise of even though it's under the guise of an environmental document, just to finish that sentence. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Riom?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I had a question about parking and traffic. So if you look at S1-3, and then looking at these, the apartment complexes, I see the parking entry. There's two of them that are basically side by side. I'm just curious, and maybe this is more a question for the applicant, but I'll start with staff. 250 units here, and we've got two entranceways, side by side. I'm just curious what our comments are on how we think the traffic is going to flow there.
Are you referring to the main entry in between the two residential buildings?
So yeah, so it
Like
says
a
main.
U-shape?
There's like a little yellow circle. It says main entry, and then to both sides of it, there's two blue dots that say parking entry.
Yes. So this is mainly for ingress and egress. So the portion closest to the left is where you would enter that driveway, and then you can exit out the other side. So it's mainly just for a one-way traffic, just for circulation purposes. But
So there's really only one entrance and one exit for both of these parking garages for both of these buildings?
yes, that is the main entrance and exit for the residential portion. And there's also a service entrance on the kind of the far west side, closest to the park entrance.
Okay, to me it's kind of concerning that we've got 250 units here and they're all using this one entrance in and out. I sort of question the.
I don't know if maybe Carol, you can help with that from traffic transportation.
I'll start off and then have our traffic consultant come up, but I believe that our traffic consultant did look over those driveways in terms of like level of service, if there'd be any impacts to queuing, and they did not find any when they did their traffic analysis, but if I don't know if there's anything else the traffic consultant would like to add.
Good evening. Here we go. My name is Francisca Church. I'm with Fair and Piers, and I prepare the traffic impact analysis for the project. Just to answer your question about the driveways, we did evaluate the operations of the driveways, and both in terms of level of service and queuing, and found there to be no impacts.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And then sort of maybe it's a question for the applicant, but I'll ask staff as well. Kind of going along with what Commissioner Simon said about tree preservation, from what we saw, what was there 10 years ago, and I agree that whoever just let a nice forest of some healthy heritage trees just die, and to sort of not see that replaced. But I know last time in the study session, there was talking about a redwood grove. And I don't see any redwood groves here. And I'm also looking at the trees that are being removed. It looks like we're moving a significant amount of trees. I also look at some of these trees that it says in the staff report, they're being removed because they're too close to buildings, 10 feet within a building. And I look at some of these trees to the right of the hotel at the very end along the curb, and I don't see any buildings. So I don't know if staff can make a comment about, maybe you haven't looked at get into the details of all this tree removal, but seems like we're moving a significant amount of trees since last time we spoke.
Yeah, so just want to note that we did walk to the site with the applicant's team and also the city arborist. We were mainly looking at the trees along the lakefront and the trees along Lakeside Drive. So some of the trees were either in poor condition or the root system could be impacted by the buildings because we had the same concern. We just wanted, there's a lot of nice trees that line the perimeter of the site, and we just wanted to make sure that was the most appropriate course of action. And we had the city arborist verify the project arborist report. Seemed to be in general concurrence, but if there's some specific trees, we can take another look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of these drawings. If you look at like 567, 566, 565, 564, I don't see any buildings there. So, and then when I read stuff like we're removing the tree, removing within landscaping, which doesn't make sense to me. We're removing trees so that we can put landscaping in there. So it's concerning that we're just take the tree out. Don't worry, we'll replace it with lollipop trees. So that's my concern. And maybe that's something I can ask the applicant.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Howe?
Yes, thank you once again, Madam Chair. The entitlements for this project were granted by the City Council in approximately 2005, is that correct?
Yes, 2005.
And so there was some demolition on the site, and then there was work stopped for a considerable, that's 11 years ago, 10 years ago maybe after the demolition. And one of the other commissioners asked, why isn't the housing requirement on this project now? How did the entitlements continue for 11 years and it doesn't reset it and you have a new project in front of you now? In other words, why aren't they subject to these housing requirements when work was stopped for approximately 10 years?
Yes.
Don't argue over 1 or 2 years. And then the entitlements, usually in the building permits, say if you haven't done anything in a couple of years, your permit lapses. And why aren't they subject to the new rules today because it's a new project? How did the entitlements carry through and not expire?
The entitlements did expire. The Lakeside specific plan is still in effect. That hasn't expired. That just runs with the land. But the previous entitlements did expire. They expired after there was no significant activity following the demolition. So it's basically a brand new special development permit, environmental review, the tentative map. So it is, and that was applied for in 2015. And that's basically why we're going through the process now. But the project was, deemed complete prior to the new housing mitigations go into effect. But it is a new project.
I missed the part on the housing mitigation portion. How does that not apply to this project here today?
So projects that were deemed complete, they submitted the application and it was a complete application prior to the housing impact being adopted, were those projects weren't subject to the new requirements because they were submitted before they became in effect. Maybe Rebecca would like to add something.
Yeah, maybe I could help out a little here. So the city used to have requirements, which you probably remember, that required BMRs for rental housing, and there was a California case which said that we could not do that.
There wasn't a nexus.
Well, they said it actually conflicts with the rent control laws that don't allow you to have rent control on buildings that are newer than a certain date. I can't remember, 1995 or something like that. So we couldn't enforce those requirements, and so we wrote a new ordinance, and we came up with the in lieu. So now they don't have to provide BMR units. They have to pay a fee
And if they don't want to pay the fee, they can provide units instead. So that's what our ordinance requires now. But there were some projects in the pipeline that were deemed complete before that ordinance went into effect. And this is one of those projects. So really, it doesn't have anything to do with what their entitlements were in 2005. It's because the law changed and our ordinance changed.
And even though the project didn't go forward for 10 years, it's still complete, and they're allowed
It's a new application. So the previous entitlements expired, and they filed a new application. And that application was deemed complete in 2015, but it was before our new ordinance requiring the fee went into effect.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And just to add one more thing, as staff did have a brief discussion with the applicant about the possibility of adding those, even though they're not required. And they didn't seem to indicate that they were interested at that point, but you can have a conversation with them when they make their presentation. But they certainly are not required to.
Okay, so I have a question, and that is, this is the project where it mentions on page 11 of 20 of the staff report, about a third up from the bottom, that updates to environmental conditions, such as the site is no longer in a flood zone. How did the project become out of the flood zone?
Yes, so this was something I believe the previous applicant pulled FEMA about. Basically, and I'm not sure of the specifics, but they did work with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, just to reassess their property. They did a new survey, and it showed that the project was out of the flood zone, or it was mapped incorrectly previously. So it's just basically, it was in the AO flood zone before. Now it's in the flood zone X, which is the lowest flood hazard. So it's just to memorialize that, because it was noted in the plan for some reason.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. So seeing no further questions, I'd like to open the public hearing, and we'll first hear from our applicant about the project. However many people want to come up. Okay, so as you know, you have 10 minutes.
Great, thank you. My name is Kurt Wittick. I am CEO of Wittick Development, acting on behalf of Sunnyvale Partners Limited, the owner of the property, which is a subsidiary of Millennium and Copthorpe Hotels. Try to be very brief. Appreciate your time. I know it's late. Briefly, we assembled a team, we think, of world-class architects, planners, engineers, etc., to design a project that fulfills the demands of the market and the mandates of the specific plan. We tried to create unique and somewhat, you could say, iconic architecture for the buildings. Millennium has a corporate policy of trying to advance the world of architecture and planning and all that they do. We think that what we did here meets those general guidelines, and specifically we tried to create a project that knit the neighborhood together with a lot of public space. We tried to play on the synergies available between the apartments and the hotel and the lake to our south. We thought that providing pedestrian ways and passages between the commercial buildings, the restaurant, the Avalon project to our west, and our two projects, and the Fairfield Inn to our east was beneficial to the neighborhood and to our project. I have Jonathan Ward of NBBJ Architects here to walk through the master plan and the hotel architecture, and John Ennis of BDE Architects to walk through the residential plan, and our attorney Patricia is here from Wendell Rosen, Patricia Curtin, and she can answer any specific legal questions. I'm sure there'll be questions for me and us as developer, so I will let them walk through the plan.
Thanks, Kurt. My name is Jonathan Ward from NBBJ Architect. So first I'll talk just very briefly about the overall plan and the hotel, and John Ennis will talk about the residential portion of the project. So what we tried to do is we tried to create a project which was able to embrace the lake, embrace this experience along the lakefront, and create something that's very welcoming and opening down that way, and also create a strong then face out to the freeway that suggests that something interesting is happening here, something powerful is happening here, something that you want to investigate and become a part of. So understanding those two sides of the site was the basis of the master plan, and locating the hotel, as you see in the view here, at that end of the site, which provides the most visibility from the freeway, we thought was most appropriate in terms of location of buildings, and the residential could be tucked back further into the site. So in terms of overall site placing, that was important. And when I talk about the hotel, in general, the idea was to create, in a way, a hill. So the hill is something that, again, holds us back to the freeway and then tumbles down to the park and to the lakefront, gathering the south light, gathering the scale of people as it moves down to the park. That was a fundamental concept that we thought was very important from the hotel, and it applies to the residential in general as well. And here you can see in the site plan that the residential is embracing this park, as I mentioned. The hotel is then also turning itself so it embraces the park, and then it's stepping down. So we've cut the top of it so it terraces down to the lake. So it has a relationship that's very important to the lakefront and very important to the conversation with the residential building. And within the hotel building is a courtyard. So there's the relationship to the city and to the public, but then there's something where you can come and be part of almost this sort of cozy environment in the hotel, this social environment. This diagram here shows you generally the components of the hotel itself, so that there's the lower levels are all the amenities, the banquet halls, the restaurants, those sorts of things. As you move up, we have the 263 rooms, which are terracing as you go up, so cutting back each level a little bit, as you move back to create that terracing experience. The parking is then tucked onto the side of the building. The ground level plan shows that, again, orientating many of the public functions to the lake. So you can have a function that participates with the lake, with the banquet halls, or the restaurant. The more private sort of hotel functions participating with the courtyard. And then, as you start moving up, the first level up is a full floor of rooms looking out over the courtyard. As you move up the next level, there's the corner of the hotel steps back. Move up, another one steps back. So there's a terrace created as you move up the building, and another one then cuts back. And then finally the top level cuts back with a rooftop bar at that point overlooking the view of the mountains and the view down to the lake. So a very simple party, but creates an iconic experience on the site for the hotel. The facade of the building is meant to be glass. It is glass, but it has a softness to it. So there's a series of articulations on there which would create a sort of soft pattern, which you'll see in some of the renderings. We imagined it almost as if in the sort of the morning fog rises up in the valley here, and it has a sort of this soft character to it. So we wanted to reduce the impact of the building on the viewer. There's just some indication of what that might be in the articulation of the facade. You can see the section cutting away to expose the courtyard. And then we just finish up real quick walking into the building. So the main entry lifts up this sort of light veil, this sort of soft veil of glass around it, and then you can see into the courtyard from the entry. As you then move into the courtyard itself, you're surrounded by the rooms, you're surrounded by the amenities. And then moving out beyond that, you're now out right along the lakefront, along that walkway that was mentioned earlier, looking back. So the hotel in distance with the terracing of this hill going up towards the freeway, and then the restaurant then facing directly at a human scale right along the waterfront. Each one with this sort of soft texture and scale to it to break down the larger scale of the volumes. A couple more close-up views of that, and then finally a view as you're sort of dropping off, coming to the building in the evening at the end of a long day, welcomed into this sort of soft embrace of the hotel. So with that, I will turn it over to John.
Chair and members of the Planning Commission, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the project. We've been at it for, I think, about a year. I'll do a brief presentation. Before I forget, we have electric meters for each unit. We're prepped for water meters for each unit. And there's no gas service to each unit. There's one common boiler. So that answers your question, I hope. I think I'm on the wrong presentation. I don't know if I can pause my time for a second? So while they're doing that, we do want to say that we've spent a lot of time working on the trees. As the architect, I wasn't there to water the trees before for the previous developer, but we spent a ton of time, and we had a lot of comments in the study sessions to look at the trees. Certainly, there are some trees that are shown as being removed that are deemed, I don't think not healthy is the right word, but not in good shape, or roots that are kind of above ground. And when we go in and do our planting, do some of our planted berms and some of our LID water treatment, so stormwater treatment, some of those trees were taken up for those reasons. It's not completely apparent on the plans, but this is the presentation now. So I think you've seen that slide a few times. I'll move on. So really what you're looking at here is the first floor. You come into the building from the top of the screen. That's the very spacious, large, and welcoming spa-like leasing office and community lounge. We do these apartment buildings now. It's not just a little leasing office. It's like a really amenity area. After the 9-to-5 leasing aspects of the project shut down, becomes amenity for the building. As you move through the building, you come up a level and onto a terrace that you look out onto the pool deck, which I think you've seen in the other slides, and that terrace is down to the lake. So the building has a real bring the outside in feeling. So you can see those three slides. The top slide is the pool deck area, planted nicely with trees and a lot of furniture. Very large pool deck with cabanas and game room, gathering facilities for the tenants. So you have large-scale gathering areas, small-scale gathering areas, a nice hierarchy of different places where you can find yourself on the podium with a lot of different amenities and game rooms and community kitchens. You can just see the basic overall layout of the units there. Just most of the building is really four-sided. There's no back or front. All the sides have units looking out. So you have eyes on the street on all sides. A lot of very active frontages on all sides of the building. It is 7 stories of development. It's a 6-story building because the first floor is a basement. So it's a 6-story building. Just wanted to make sure I said that. But you see a section through the part of the building where the units are, and then you see another section where there's really nothing there. So the building's very much broken down and perforated. Unlike many apartment buildings we do that are more massive, there's a lot of views and air flowing through and around all this project. The materials have been chosen to really create an active exterior. We went through a lot of design comments. We got a lot of comments from the architect that worked on the project, and we've chosen materials that really try to break down the mass. It's not a shoebox-looking building. It's very interesting on the top. The parapets are sculpted to create kind of a more organic shape in plan and in section. I'll really be here for any questions. You can see just the terracing down of the project towards the lake. We think it's a great amenity for our project and for visitors to the project that either live there or are just visiting. And with 1 second left, I'll be here for any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sure there'll be questions. Commissioner Weiss.
Question about the modular units. Are they going to be produced in the United States or abroad?
The current planning is for the modular units for the apartments to be made in Boise, Idaho, and the modular units for the hotel manufactured in Poland.
I assume you have someone in place to make sure that it meets all of our environmental and safety standards?
As if it were built here, yes. We are required to meet all the same standards regardless of where it's manufactured.
Does that go for labor standards as well?
I don't understand the question.
Fair labor standards, pay, hours, safety?
I don't believe there is a standard for labor. That necessarily meets the U.S. standards. I know that
Fair labor practices?
Poland is a part of the EU. Poland has a a market economy, and people work for market wages that I believe they're happy to receive in Poland. But I don't know as if you're asking a particular labor standard that's being transferred from the United States to Poland.
Okay. I know the question was raised before about retail, but I'm going to get a little more specific. No, not major retail, but has any thought been given, especially for the apartment residents, to have a convenience store there, where instead of having to get in a car and drive somewhere to get a container of milk, there would be the equivalent of a small convenience store? I've seen this done in other places. I've seen it done in Miami and Philadelphia and even in Maui, so that it's there. No one is going to go to the Mercado Center. I know that was mentioned, or the Santa Clara Center for something, but it would be really nice, probably for the neighborhood as well, just to have this as a convenience to cut down on all of the traffic at the impacted intersections.
Right. I think Millennium is going to try to be responsive to the synergies between the hotel and the apartment, and responsive to the needs of both. So the current planning is that there will be a full-service restaurant, a bar, obviously, a significant grab-and-go area with prepared foods, drinks, sandwiches, healthy foods, etc., and a sundry shop. There is a conversation active about being responsive to the apartment dwellers with perhaps an expanded array of products, and I'm certain that will continue, and they will respond to the demands of those there.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Simons.
Sure, I wanted to talk to you what I talked about with the staff. A lot of the trees were damaged by neglect over the period of the hotel not being developed. And one of the things that I kind of mentioned very frequently back then when they were dying, and back now and during the study session, is that I'm really looking for an environment that's that is local, has some element of relationship with what was once there. All I can just say is, after reviewing your plans for it, you have a very traditional selection of ornamentals and a number of what I would call larger species trees, but by far it's ornamental with a few smatterings, a lot of different color. I don't know, there's such a disconnect with my expectations and what I've seen. Have you had any discussions of any alternatives and what you could see as a vision of this project?
Our charge to the design staff across the board, including landscape architects, was to be responsive to comments being received throughout the process from staff, and to be responsive to the realities of the site and the design. So I can't answer specifically to what you're saying, but that was certainly the instruction, to save any of these species trees wherever possible, and to create a landscape environment that took into account as much and as many of the comments that we received along the way.
Okay, I just sharing with you, it's just what I've got is disappointing. That has a major impact, partly because beyond architecture, the landscaping, hopefully when it's watered and everything else like that, actually lasts a lot longer than any of the buildings potentially, and would be contributing. And just a gross look at what is available there that you have in your plans, a lot of it's very, the lifetimes are pretty short. Some of them are very quick growing, some of them are just small and they're ornamental and they won't last very long. And so I'm really thinking about seeing what I can get some support for, but that this will have, that there would be a different objective that I would expect from the staff to work with you, potentially. I mean, my standard is that, you know, you'd be working with a native tree palette. There would be a significant quantity, because of this site and what used to be there, of estate-sized trees, genetically, not that they have to be instantly planted, you know, 100-foot tall trees. That's not what I'm asking for, but ones that will become estate-sized trees, and that it's going to try to bring back a similar environment that was destroyed due to neglect, and recreate a sense of place in this area through the fauna. And a lot of the stuff, whether it's ginkgos or others that there are different issues with, all I'm just saying is I don't think that this really connects with the quality of the architecture that you're handing us, and I just see a problem with it. So that's just a comment. The other problem is that even though it's mentioned that there is some wayfinding, do you think there's any problem that there'd be wayfinding at the pedestrian walkways at the entrances and the intersections? And just make sure that that's done.
I believe that's an integral part of the plan.
I heard that. I started looking, trying to figure out, and doing some key searches, and I didn't see that it was spelled out at the entrances. And you know, you think the staff can speak to that?
Yeah, so this, the pedestrian wayfinding, as well as the building signage, that'd be part of the overall master sign program.
Yeah.
And that's something that we can ensure gets implemented as part of this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it's just got to be the entrances, the intersections have to be included.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about it.
you add any elements you'd like to see, and it's not a time to submit the master sign program. Once they do, we'll ensure that those elements are included.
Cool beans. I think.
Yeah, two things to your questions. I think we remain committed to working with the council and or the commission and staff on appropriately planning the landscape. You know, I think we made every effort, as I said, to knit together the neighborhood with the pathways and the dedication of the spaces and such, and we're committed to, you know, kind of fulfill the whole mandate. So if there are tweaks to this that you're suggesting that work within the context of what we're doing, we're very open to that. And I know the wayfinding was important to your Parks Department, and we're absolutely committed to creating whatever the best level of wayfinding is.
Thank you. I have two questions. One of them is about the shuttle for workers in the hotel. The letter that we got says that there's possible exclusion of workers from the shuttle program. I did read the material, and it does specifically mention residents and guests, but there is a TDM program that you have for the project. Can you speak to the TDM aspects of employees?
It was not our intention to exclude employees, and they are certainly welcome to partake in and utilize the shuttle to various forms of transportation.
Okay. Is there some aspects of your TDM program that specifically address employee transportation, or?
I don't believe there were, but I think it's logical to include employees in allowing them to avail themselves of the shuttle as if they were a resident or a guest at the hotel.
Okay, great. And then my other question is, I see in the specs there that you have 63 electric car charging units planned, and I can't say whether that was specifically for the residence area or specifically for the hotel. What would you say to 90?
I think there were two separate requirements, so I don't actually know the answer to that question. There was a requirement by some code for the residents and for the hotel. I think if it's crucially important to somebody to have more charging stations, we're open to that, but I don't know if 63 was just for the residents. Does John or Jonathan know? I don't know the answer.
I think code requires 3% of the charging stations, and I think a lot of projects we put in infrastructure for more. We wouldn't want to maybe like add a transformer just for that number, so I don't want to specifically agree to a number, but I think we're happy to include the infrastructure up to that number, provided it works within the confines of the electrical service to the building, if that makes sense. If that, you know what I'm trying to say.
I don't know the answer to that, so, okay. All right, thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions, so now we're going to open the, we're going to be speaking with members of the public. If you'd like to speak on this project, please fill out a speaker card. I have one speaker card, and it's from Stefano Medina.
Good evening. So, yeah, my name is Stefano Medina. I'm here on behalf of Unite Here Local 19, the union that represents hotel, food, and beverage workers in the South Bay, many of whom live and or work in Sunnyvale. Our members stand to be impacted by this project as workers, residents, and commuters. Workers employed at the Four Point Sheraton that was previously located at this site were members of our union. So we have a long-standing interest in the development of this project. That's why we are here tonight, to share some of our concerns regarding the supplemental EIR. First, we thank staff for responding to our comment letter to the draft SEIR. However, we still believe that the project would be improved by further examination of the issues our letter addressed. We have a letter that is in front of many of you right now, but we'll briefly just summarize our broad areas of concern. Our first concern deals primarily with the project's transportation impacts that could negatively impact hotel workers. We asked the city to further explore the possibility of a shuttle program that might reduce the project's traffic impacts. Although the city stated in its response that the project's shuttle bus program was not intended to mitigate the traffic impacts to a less than significant level, our view remains that exploring the possibility of a more extensive program might provide significant benefits to the project. Additionally, the city's response referred to the deal where the project's shuttle program was open to residents and clients. So we would be happy to see the inclusion of the project's employees moving forward. But workers are also likelier to use public transportation, buses, for their commutes. And as our letter details, we believe that the city should further explore the service level impacts, as they could disproportionately affect our workers. We do have a third concern that questions the jobs housing ratio analysis, as there is a discrepancy between the project's creation of low wage jobs and market rate housing. We would like to raise concerns regarding how the project fits into Sunnyvale's wider plans for affordable housing. Overall, we believe that the affordability of the housing units is of an environmental concern if the project as a whole is not in line with the jobs housing balance and the goals of Sunnyvale's housing element. While the housing element proposes mitigation strategies for addressing this problem, this project includes none of those proposed strategies. And finally, we would like to suggest that while the project was deemed complete prior to the effective date of the Housing Impact Fee Ordinance, the developer should pay a housing impact fee to avoid creating further strain on the affordable housing market, given the project will create low-wage jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I have no other speaker cards from members of the public, so it's now the opportunity for the applicant or his representatives to speak with regard to the project for an additional 10 minutes, if you like, or for some portion of that.
I don't think we have anything further to say.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, do you have any other questions for staff? Okay, not seeing any. I am ready for a motion. Commissioner Simons.
I move with alternatives 1, 2, and 6. Modifications would be just one. First is a real quickie. A recommendation to include the wayfinding for the pedestrian walkways, the entrances and intersections be included. That's just a recommendation to not be forgotten later on. Number 2, to go with staff's recommendation to include GC 18 language and to carry it to, is it PN2 and EP3? Is that right? Are those the right sections?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Secondly, that main change would be a landscaping modification, that this project will use a native tree palette with a significant quantity of that are appropriate for the site, but include a significant quantity of estate-sized genetic species trees. And that is it for now.
Thank you. I think I had a second from, my second line was Commissioner Olofsson.
Point of clarification before I make a second. You said 1, 2, and 6, and 1 and 2 are exactly opposite.
I'm sorry. It was 1, 3, and 6. I jumped the gun and I was just looking at what I highlighted. So it's 1, 3, and 6.
In that case, I second the motion.
Okay, good.
Thanks for the clarification, actually.
All right, Commissioner Simons, would you like to speak to your motion?
I do have some issues with the project. Main one was landscaping, and not to beat a dead horse, but it's about the problems that this project had being derelict for so long and much of the landscaping dying. I really think that this requires a review and a placement of appropriate types of local flora for the site. I have no problem with the findings. I am in support of the findings, and also that the staff recommendations to carry the language. I kind of reviewed it, and it seemed appropriate. It has all to do with the parks usage of the site, and when different parts of it will be closed to the public, and when it will be that the track through the property will be kept open, and so I didn't see any problem with that either. So that is it.
Thank you. Commissioner Olofsson, to your second.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like this project. I've been concerned for some time that we approve projects that are going to bring a lot of new residents into the city, and a fee is paid for more park amenities, and we never get the new parks. We just fix up the ones we have. So this one clearly adds some open space usable by the public. I think that's a great addition to this city. I like the architecture. I'm really going to be interested in observing how modules are plopped on top of each other to make what looks to be a very attractive buildings. So I can make the findings for the special development permit and the tentative map as we proposed. I'm looking forward to this thing progressing and recommend that my fellow commissioners vote with me to approve it.
Thank you. Commissioner Riel.
Thanks, Chair. I too can make the findings for this project, the special development permit. I kind of agree with what people are saying. You know, this is a nice project. It's as I think as you stated, it's an iconic design. It's not your typical hotel. I appreciate that you are coming forward with something that's going to sort of be, you're going to notice it coming down the highway. Not to beat a dead horse, but I will just shortly. The whole thing about the landscaping is, it's a little bittersweet to see that site just sort of, this whole site just die off in the last 10 years. So unfortunately, you had to take the brunt of it tonight. But, I do agree with Commissioner Simons about bringing the right type of landscaping. This is a very quality design, and to be putting just lollipops up there is just not going to go well with it. So I think overall it's going to do us all well. The last thing I'll say too is I am too glad that we're adding some public open space, and I think it'll be a good addition to this neighborhood, and I hope my fellow commissioners can support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Weiss? No, my mistake. Commissioner Howell.
Oh, she can go right ahead. It's fine,
right.
unless you
Weiss,
choose.
your lights off.
Thank you. I find it unfortunate that this project just escapes being required to pay the in lieu fees for housing, and I find it unfortunate that all of the modules cannot be manufactured in the United States. Having said that, there are things I appreciate about the project. I found the architecture dynamic. I like the inside-outside feel to the whole project. I like the reciprocal access for both hotel guests and apartment residents, the airport shuttle, which hopefully will reduce some of the traffic congestion. And I also like the commitment to building and running a high-quality restaurant that will serve 3 meals a day and be open to the public. So for these reasons, I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Howe?
I'm good.
All right. Commissioner Melton?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll be supporting the motion. This has been a long road to get here, so I applaud our applicants' endurance and sticking with it through a number of public outreach meetings and study sessions with the Planning Commission to get to the point where we are today. It'll be good to get the site going. I like the architecture and many other things about the project, and I can make the findings, and I'll point out that especially I can make the findings as required by CEQA to certify the supplemental environmental impact report. Mr. Medina, I applaud your letter from Unite Here 19, and I think you bring up a number of important points about the workers, and I'm glad to hear a level of cooperation from our applicant with regards to employees being able to use the shuttle. What you're asking for on the developer should pay a housing impact fee to avoid creating further strain on the affordable housing market. Well, it may be a sentence that everybody can agree with. It is well beyond the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to unilaterally impose housing impact fees on applicants. So that's out of our jurisdiction, even though I may agree with what you're saying. But beyond that, I'm really looking forward to seeing the site get going and for the project to come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Simons?
Is there any problem about, since we haven't added in the language for certifying the supplemental and other staff recommendations at the very end, would that be required, or is it all set? I guess the staff is off to figure out what needs to be done to.
So you moved alternatives 1, 3, and 6. Is
Correct.
that right?
And then is the supplemental?
You need to do. You left out 4, which is the resolution. Oh no, wait, that one. No, that's 3. I think he covered everything. Did he cover everything? Yeah.
And then it says okay. I kept thinking that there's this add-on with the supplemental. But if it's okay.
Yeah, our suggestion was 1, 3, and 5. You took 1, 3, and 6, and 6 is just to modify 5. So I think you're good.
So no problem. Okay.
Okay. I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to the makers of the motion, and that is that the number of electric car charging stations be increased to the capacity of the existing infrastructure, and that the employee transportation needs are included in the TDM and shuttle programs.
And real quick question, does this impact both the hotel and the residential?
My understanding is it only impacts the residential.
Okay. Accepted.
Yes, I mean, it could be for hotel workers as well.
My understanding about the electric car charging stations is it only affects the residential.
But for the EV stations, most of the spaces are within the residential.
Sure. Okay.
Accepted as is.
Okay, and Commissioner Olafson?
I can accept the shuttle, but I don't want to design this project from the dais for the charging stations, because we don't know at this point whether what's in there that's set by the council is adequate or not. So I can't support changing that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I can't hear it. I see. Okay, so we have a suggestion that there can be a vote as to whether or not the majority of the commissioners accept that condition of approval.
I think the rule is that for a friendly amendment, if it's not accepted, there need to be a motion to amend the motion.
Okay.
So someone would have to make a motion to amend, and that would have to be seconded and voted on.
Got it. Okay, great. Before we vote, I'd like to make a motion to amend the conditions of the original motion, and that would be that the number of electric car charging stations be increased to the capacity of not more than 90. It's currently 63, not more than 90, to the capacity of the infrastructure that's on site. That's my motion to amend. Is there a second? Commissioner Simons?
Second.
Okay. I'll speak to that motion. We recently had a meeting with regard to the Climate Action Plan, and the basic idea was floated that something that the city could do to meet the state's mandated goals was to further electrify, to make every effort possible to further electrify our infrastructure, and that being an electric car driver, I know that basically the only impediment to increased electric car use is the lack of charging stations. So I'm floating that idea with all projects coming forward to further our cap goals before the whole study, before we get it officially in the cap, just see what we can get done. That's my reason for the motion. Okay, so no comment from the second Commissioner Melton.
Question for staff: is this within the purview of the Planning Commission?
Well, we do have code requirements for EV chargers, and you're asking to expand that. It is something that you can do in my reasoning, that you can accept, or you can ask for more.
At some point, I'd like to know, maybe not right now, where the line is drawn. For example, within the past 10 minutes, we reaffirmed that it's not within the Planning Commission's jurisdiction to unilaterally impose housing mitigation fees. So there's something that's an example that we cannot do, reserved to the jurisdiction of the City Council. But I think we're saying when it comes to things like trees, right, ornamental species, size of boxes and so forth, or in this case of EV chargers, it's within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. And I'd like to know where that line is in between, why we can say yes to the EV chargers. By the way, I agree with the motion, but I'd like to know where that line is drawn.
So the goes back to the concept of creating policy on the dais. Is the number that is adopted came from a study session that the council ultimately approved. So in that respect, it is what the current code requirement is came from a study issue about setting that proper number, and it is based on a lot of different factors. But Chair Harrison's correct that there's a lot of interest in increasing some of those. So it's something that I think that you can do, but we'll look into it and come back to you and let you know. We'll get a little more clarity as to some of these, some of these ambitious endeavors to try to increase it, but then we don't really have all the information to say whether it's feasible or infeasible at this point right here, and how consistent it is.
So I would be very interested in seeing that information. I also applaud that the motion to amend has an upper limit numerically to it, but just a hypothetical question would be, what happens if it doesn't have an upper limit? And is there an upper limit where the Planning Commission exceeds its purview to start requiring these changes? These are questions I'd like the answer to. And I'll be supporting the motion. I agree with Chair Harrison that it's important. And I heard the chair state that, you know, she's going to be making these sorts of requests on all projects going forward, that, you know, I would just opine that sounds more like a policy thing than an application thing. And I understand policies take time to enact, but if the intent is to create a new policy, you know, one way to do that would be to do a new policy rather than to implement on a one-off, one-by-one basis on each project. But I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For your motion, can you read it for me one more time? Because would you read it one more time?
Sure. No problem. The basic idea was to increase the number of electric car charging stations from the current number of 63 to not more than 90, with the constraint that if 75 exceeds the capacity of the current infrastructure, that 74 would be fine.
Thank you very much.
And
for that clarification. I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, cool. And then the second part had to do with the TDM program that includes the employees.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Olafson.
I will not be supporting the motion for a couple of reasons. One, we're now jumping into helping the owner of this property design his project. He's got got to make money on the deal, and I think it's inappropriate for an unelected body such as ourselves, which are charged with implementing council policy, to change it on the fly and saying, we think it's a great idea. We have a process, although it is laborious, to study issues, present the results of those studies to the council, and ask them to change or extend an existing policy. Herein, we're asking we are saying we have that authority to change the rules on the fly. And I don't know if 90 is adequate. I don't know if it's grossly overbearing. I just don't know. And I'm not sure any of us know, other than, gee, it's a great idea. Right now, the great ideas are, let's electrify all our cars. And most of those cars are being subsidized by us, the taxpayers, but it's a great idea. I'm just not convinced at all that this is an idea that this body has the authority to implement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have, so this would have to do with the motion to appeal, Rebecca?
To amend. So you're voting on whether to add that to the motion. So you're not voting right now on whether or not to adopt that requirement, but whether to add it to the motion.
Right, okay. So now we will vote on that motion to amend. Okay, so a brief flash there. So that motion, they're waving me off. I'm just okay.
Not able to display my laptop. So we have 5 yeses and 2 noes.
Okay, so the motion to amend passes with Commissioner Olafson and Commissioner Weiss dissenting. So now we're voting on the motion as amended. Okay, seeing no more comments, let's vote.
Chair Harrison, if you could vote again, and Chair Hingham as well. Sorry, there's a delay. Thank you. All yeses.
Okay, so the motion carries. Andy, what is the fate of the motion?
The motion carries, and the City Council hearing is tentatively scheduled for December 13th.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we move on to standing items, consideration of potential study issues. I think we can, do we do this consideration of potential study issues now and then move on into adjourn in the West Conference Room?
What I would suggest is that we do everything on the agenda short of the study issue ranking.
Right.
Any items for you that you'd like to discuss, anything from staff,
Right.
And then we'll go ahead and adjourn and go to the West Conference.
Okay, so consideration of potential study issues. Not seeing any lights. Next is non-agenda items and comments. The first is commissioner comments. Okay, I don't see anything. Staff comments.
I'll see you in the West Conference Room.
That's it. Okay, fine. All right, so this meeting of the Sunnyvale Planning Commission is now adjourned at...
No, hold on. It's not adjourned.
We're adjourning to the West Conference
To the
Room.
West Conference
Okay,
Room, yes.
bang the
It's
gavel.
still a public hearing and still open.
All right. Adjourning to the conference room.